Hi, I'm Vikram, the co founder of Crunch, and I wanted to quickly give you a rundown of what Crunch does through this tech myself. So we'll jump straight to the slides. What you're seeing on the very left is the various databases that we work with, warehouses we can integrate with, even the data that is in your Salesforce, HubSpot, any tool that you're using, or for that matter, a third party system that may be very internal. Now, this box that you see, which is the semantic layer plus the operation layer, is where in Crunch exactly comes in. The way you could interact with us is just use the semantic layer, which sort of will aggregate all the data that you have across your warehouses. It would ensure that a business term, such as gross revenue, is actually mapped to the right columns, or for that matter, the right mathematical calculation that you need to perform on those columns. Because in warehouses, the data that is getting stored is in a very weird format. It's not at all business friendly. And if you just ask a question like, what is the revenue, there is a whole bunch of operation that is going on, which is pick this number, subtract this number, do a certain particular mathematical calculation on it before that final answer is given to you. So that semantic layer is where that mapping is done. And I would jump straight into actually giving you an example of what happens today, right? Like, so if you don't have a semantic layer and a user asks you a question, which is which active users of premium plans were acquired from North America region. Now, this question, an analyst would ideally break it down into a bunch of tasks, right? Like, so they would just go in and say, hey, for answering this, I need to go look at Google Analytics data, which is account plan location, for maybe the Salesforce data, which is package user ID. You have something in amplitude. Basically, the analyst is manually trying to map what all things they need to refer to be able to answer that question. And if for whatever reason there is a data mismatch, which often ends up happening, you see that, okay, the number of users that we are seeing from Salesforce is 110, but the number of users we are seeing on HubSpot is maybe 112. It may be a very small number, but that is where the lack of trust comes in. When it comes to revenue, when it comes to making a presentation to boards, it becomes even more critical that the system should be answering everything in a precise format, in a correct format. So, with semantic layer, what ends up happening is that business leaders, whenever they ask a question, the semantic layer comes into the play and it retrieves the data from the right source. But because the logic is defined beforehand, and we define this logic with stakeholders, we define this logic with your data team, we work with them. So every time you ask a question, only the right value gets picked up and the answer is served to you. So you know that your simple, plain English question, which is a business point of view, can be mapped to a data set in a very seamless fashion without any complexity. Ultimately, what the semantic layer does is that it ensures that your data can understand the business language. It also ensures that there are all of these definitions in one place. So next time when you have to update anything, all you need to do is actually come in and make some tweaks to the semantic layer, and everything in the schema thereafter just changes. You don't have to worry about the thousand tables that are in the backend for you. Maybe there are a couple of tables that are the ultimate source of truth. And for that matter, of course, there is a much more deeper control over data management. But essentially, if I go back to this diagram, you will see that you can also have API connections with all of these external tools. Now, maybe you are using something without a semantic layer today for your analysis and running into these issues. Even analysts, when they are tasked with figuring out the answer to a question, they go back, realize that, okay, there is some sort of a mismatch, and they spend a lot of time actually just cleaning the data, processing it, dissecting it, rechecking things, and so on. But that brings me to the next layer, this orange box that you see, which is titled operating layer. What we are essentially doing with operating layer is that this is a multi-step analytical workflow. So we have also exposed something which is in the form of a UI, or our own Crunch UI, wherein you can just go on and ask the system to do analytics for you. So this could be a very open-ended question, which is a root cause analysis, or it could be an ad hoc data query, or it could be something which is very standard, such as how is a particular feature doing. Maybe you are running a campaign, you want to figure out how's the performance been, how many people are on a paid trial, what are they doing, like standard stuff, right? Like, now the way this works is that we have built this system wherein, without an operating layer, if you actually depend on an analyst, they're going to take their own sweet time. If you go in and lean in on an LLM, and our operating layer is actually trying to get you to leverage the qualities that come with an LLM. These new models that are coming in, and with the advancement of AI, even the newer models that are going to come in, they're going to be extremely powerful. But it's not easy working with these LLMs. You see, when you dump an Excel table into something like Chat GPT and you ask a question, it doesn't understand it. In fact, it's deadly because it will give you a very wrong answer very confidently. What we are trying to do is that, you see on the left side, if a real person is trying, an analyst is trying to get Chat GPT to do something, you have to at every level give like hundreds of manual commands, right? Like, and you're trying to provide the next step, you're trying to give it directions, it will still do something wrong. You'd have to validate the query. We've observed the pattern of what kind of data the system really resonates with. It could be any model. It could be a model that is as popular as ChatGPT. It could be a model that is deployed on your computer so that no data ever leaves or goes on to any AI server. It could be something like Mistral, which can be deployed on your cloud for that matter, right? Like, and what ends up happening is that this system that we have built, when you ask a question, it goes and does the thousand times of back and forth that it has to do, and it serves you the one right answer. Of course, you still have a flexibility. If you are a data scientist, data analyst who's familiar with code, you can go in and check what exactly happened. But that whole back and forth is taken care of by the system, right? Like, we have seen a lot of people try LLMs and feel that it's very complex, it's not giving you the right answers and so on. So we are hitting on exactly that. Essentially, with the operating layer, of course, the data becomes accessible to everyone, because now instead of even going to an analyst or a data team member, you can directly ask the system a question. And if it is built on top of the semantic layer that we just talked about, you can be rest assured that the data is accurate. And for that matter, we can also build very custom AI agents. So the operating layer that you are seeing, the orange box, it gets deployed in the form of an agent. Now, that agent can be tasked with certain special qualities. You can go in and say, do a regression analysis for me, figure out patterns of users for me, do a churn prediction for me. And then that model will go in and look at that data with that lens, right? Like, and of course, it's conversational. So you can go in and dive deeper as much as you want. But for analysts and data team members who are listening to this, I know that you're familiar with something called Notebook, which is why Crunch UI gives you a support for a notebook. It also gives support for someone who is only familiar with dashboards, wants to just look at a dashboard, play around with widgets, apply maybe some filters, and for someone who is comfortable with NLP. Now, coming on to a few important questions, who is this really relevant for? We're trying to work with companies who are working with multiple data sets, and they feel that sometimes the data accuracy or that sense of things being mismatched pertains or it exists, or for that matter, the data analysis in itself is very slow. When you're trying to do something, maybe the analysts are overburdened, maybe you are just asking fewer questions because you know that it's going to take a lot of time. And if you are in general a very curious business leader, you would love it. At the same time, for people who are data analysts and business analysts, if you are getting a question from top down and you are spending somewhere about, let's say, 9 hours, 10 hours doing something, we can reduce your time to analysis itself by about 85 to 90%. And we have seen this with a few customers. Now, the way to work ahead on this, if this is of interest to you, would simply be to let us know that you are interested. What we do is we come in as a concierge service. We come in with a team of experts. We look at the systems that you have in place today. We understand how it is formatted, and we sit with you to actually help you even set up that semantic layer. After that semantic layer is set up, you can choose to not use the operating layer, or you can choose to use the operating layer. And if you are concerned about the data security, I already informed you that we can deploy a system or work with LLM models, which are now new age, which can be deployed even locally on your computer. So no data even actually leaves the system. On top, we also have a master service agreement. We can deploy it on your servers. We are ISO compliant. We have GDPR certification. We are working with SOC 2, which is almost also here, given that our compliance is through. And that's all that I wanted to talk about. So I would love to know what you think about it. If you are someone who sits anywhere in this top table that you are seeing, executives, analysts, business teams, sales teams, marketing teams, maybe RevOps team, this is for you. We will give you a personal analyst of sorts you can chat with. This is as you interact with your data analyst. But at the same time, data analysts, because we also support SQL, R, Python, and all of these warehouses, you will save a lot of time if you use Crunch. Looking forward to your feedback. Thank you. That's all for now.